Now I have to get to one of the wildest hot takes around the NBA. And there have been some very wild ones going around. I saw a quote about how inside the NBA is the worst thing to happen to the NBA, and it's why their ratings are dropped. We're not doing that today. But I do have to go over to something that happened over on First Take. Stephen A. Smith made one of the worst comparisons. And I think that even the biggest Joel Embiid hater would sit back and say, oh, absolutely not. Get that shit out of here. I want you to hear what Stephen A. Smith had to say about Joel Embiid and when being asked about should the Sixers shut him down. Remember, Joel Embiid fractured his right sinus. There was that forearm across the face against the Pacers. He leaves the game. Monday, I showed you what Tom Wilson looked like after fracturing his sinus, where like half his face was blown up. The question is out there. Should the Sixers shut down Embiid for longer? Should they let him get healthy? My actual concern isn't the sinus, right? It has since been reported, Nick Nurse said that even though he wasn't here, from what he's learned, this facial fracture, the sinus fracture, is significantly less severe than the prior two, which is great, except like it's the third facial fracture. With that in mind, I'm still more concerned about Joel Embiid's knee and that big-ass brace he's got. That is like clearly, his mobility is limited. Now, is it the brace or is the brace so necessary that he can't play without? I don't know. But okay, let's listen to Stephen A. Smith because he compared Joel Embiid to a former Sixer. And even if you're a hater, I don't know about this. Let's hear what Stephen A. Smith has.
Let me say this affectionately to Joel Embiid.
Still thinking about the squirrels.
He's one of my favorite people in the NBA. Let me say this to Joel Embiid in all seriousness. My brother, you're about a tad bit away from being compared to Ben Simmons.
I'm sorry, what?
It's starting to look that bad. Now, let me tell you something right now. You bring up the injuries and all of that stuff. I look at the disinterest on his face. And that was before it got cracked. Okay? I look at the disinterest, the lack of enthusiasm, whatever. Now, we can talk about his injuries, and fair enough, Perk, right? But here's the problem. You were injured last year. You only played 39 games. In the playoffs, obviously, you got bounced in the first round by the New York Knicks. Sure. You didn't look that way in the Olympics. Looked pretty damn happy.
He didn't
look pretty damn happy playing in the Olympics, okay?
All right, hold on. We got it. We have to interrupt. He looked like shit in the Olympics, okay? He had a really good game against Serbia. He had a really good game, which was his main focus, his main function for being on Team USA was to try to shut down Nikola Jokic. That was his only purpose. Joel Embiid did not look happy and great in the Olympics. In fact, if we rewind the clock a little bit to earlier on this show, I think I was doing the show around the Olympics. I think it was. If not, it was on Crossing Broadcast. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Embiid did not look happy. Embiid didn't play. He didn't look like himself. We actively questioned if he was hurt or out of shape. National pundits like Stephen A. Smith were saying that he looked like shit. No, he didn't look happy. The only time I remember seeing Joel Embiid legitimately look happy was on some of the behind-the-scenes videos, right? Like there was the one where they were doing the left-handed free throw competition. He looked happy to be around those guys and happy behind the scenes. He wasn't like hitting the DX crotch chop in the Olympics consistently, from what I remember. No, I don't agree with this notion that Joel Embiid looked so much happier and has just looked miserable since coming back to the Sixers. He's looked miserable at the Sixers because he's been hurt.
And then inexplicably, you ain't ready to go come this season. All right?
That's true.
And I'm looking at that, and I got this list of injuries here, just so y'all know. Sinus fracture. Foot, knee, health protocols, back, hand, face, ankle, shoulder, calf, hip, elbow, ribs, injury management. That is why
And a partridge in a pear tree with a fractured beak.
I was against your assertion to sit him down, because I'm going like this. He's always hurt. This brother will get hurt going to the bathroom. I got to use him when I got to use him, because I never know. Just because you don't play him don't mean he ain't going to show up hurt. Wow. Evidenced by him playing in the Olympics, looking just fine, and then 2 months later when the season starts, there's nothing. He's injured.
Stephen A. Smith saying that is not surprising. Stephen A. Smith is being, he has been questioned quite a bit this year from the vantage point of, is he somebody who is actively watching the games? And when he's offering his feedback on the games, is he being honest and forthright and truthful? about how much he's watching them and how far into these games. I think it's been a fair critique and a fair criticism of Stephen A. Smith. I do. For better or worse, like, it doesn't seem like he's actively paying attention. Because again, Joel Embiid in the offseason, or like in the playoffs, or not, Jesus, in the Olympics, did not look like Joel Embiid. He looked absolutely horrible. He looked so bad, in fact, that there were many times where people actively sat back and said to themselves, yo, he shouldn't be playing. He shouldn't be playing in the Olympics at all. Now, this idea of like Embiid as Ben Simmons is so wildly off base. Even if you're somebody who actively hates Joel Embiid, and there are some, I don't know how you could possibly wrap your head around the idea that like Joel Embiid is that bad. Like, I don't see it. Embiid didn't look good in the Olympics. We all called that out. We all realized just how bad he looked, and we were actively concerned about it. So, like, Stephen A. Smith, I think, is just looking for a way to try to drum up some interest for the show, which is fair. He has one of the most successful sports shows on TV. But at the same time, like, we have to be able to call it like it is. Now, if Stephen A. Smith wants to make the case that Joel Embiid doesn't look good or happy with the Sixers, that's fair. Because he doesn't look good or happy. But why doesn't he look good or happy? Because he's been injured since the offseason. That's it. He's been hurt for months. You want to question why he wasn't ready to start the season? I've broken this down a bunch of times on the show. I think he got hurt somewhere, either at the Olympics or shortly thereafter, and that's why the Sixers lied about their plan, or lied to the public and made it sound like he was on track. Of course he's not going to look happy. It's another season that like is supposedly of his prime is being wasted because he's hurt again. It's a season where they finally went out and got a legitimate third star in Paul George. These are things that he should have been able to look forward to and to play with and to play through. And instead, he's missed a ton of the season. He's presumably going to miss even more. They're talking about he's going to be reevaluated in a week. I made the joke he might not play again until January. It's entirely within the realm of possibility. Now, I mentioned on Monday, if the facial fracture was significant enough that he's going to miss a month or 2 months, I would just shut him down and also get him the knee surgery that he apparently passed on getting last year. But if it's just a right sinus fracture and it's not nearly as serious as the other ones and he might be able to play in a week, then fine. But man, he's already a big guy. His weight and his conditioning have already been called into question. And now he's got a fractured sinus. Now, I am not a doctor, but my presumption here is that it's going to be harder to breathe with a fractured sinus. And even if he gets that fixed and has surgery, there's going to be healing. He's not going to look particularly good until that's healed up. Make of that what you will.